Insert spooky noises.
Audio. What was it? The hyper sync?
Hemisync.
Hemisync.
When you get... Whoa. Space bar.
I hit that and it didn't do it.
The sound that you're now hearing is the 4 to 7 hertz theta wave range. This is used to manipulate your mind and tell you to listen to this podcast every time. Like every time. Listen to the words we're saying. No, this is the sound used for the hemisync process, used in the gateway process, which is part of a vast, not necessarily complicated system. It's actually quite easy and anyone can do it, and that's the beauty of it. But this sound is used to synchronize the hemispheres of your brain and help you think at a higher frequency. Are you annoyed yet? No, our voices over this, obviously, here, we'll stop that. This is used in what is known as the gateway process, which we'll be talking about later. Today on the Kooks, Cranks, and Iconoclast podcast with myself, Mike.
And I'm Matt.
And due to technical malfunctions, J-Lo is currently off-world on business but will return next week.
We're going to be talking about a fellow by the name of Ingo Swann. We're also going to be talking about the government remote viewing program, as well as a recently released document by the CIA known as the gateway process, which is used to travel to other dimensions, incite out-of-body experiences, and astral projection. We're also going to be talking about a couple alien theories, which are inextricably interlinked with most of this stuff. Matt, I'm going to kick it over to you now. Why don't you let us know about the history of some of this stuff?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff, man. I went through a couple of records, and I had... The more I looked into this, the odder it got to me, because the amount of money spent on this alone, it's pretty sad.
Oh yeah. If I may make a quick interjection on government spending, you may be upset to hear that the figures of what was invested in this range in the millions, but to put that in sort of perspective, the government also spent $600,000 on a study to find out why chimps throw their feces. This is true. It's an actual thing. We'll
we had to know.
Yeah, we'll put a link in our show notes on the website. You can check it out.
So anyways, Project Stargate was a secret U.S. Army unit established in 1978 at Fort Meade, Maryland. It was started by the Defense Intelligence Agency and SRI, International...
Stanford Research Institute.
Yeah, and based out of California. And this was to investigate for potential psychic phenomena in military and domestic intelligence operations and applications. You know, spying.
Mm-hmm.
And
spies.
Yes. The project and its precursors were sister projects, originally went by various code names, actually. Gondola Wish, Stargate, Grill Flame, Center Lane, Project CF, as in CF, Sunstreak, Scan 8, and ran like these all changed over numerous times until 91, and when they were consolidated and completely operated by the CIA up until 1995 as Project Stargate.
If I may also interject, the whole impetus behind this was that the powers that be were concerned that during the Cold War, the Soviets were far ahead of us in paranormal research, I guess would be the way to put it. So they're worried about a psychic gap. And, you know...
Can't have that.
Yeah, can't have a gap. The idea behind it, supposedly, according to some people, is that the Soviets sort of put this disinformation out there in order to cause the United States to waste time and money looking into all this stuff. However, it's come to light in more recent years that not only did the United States supposedly have a alien craft, crash during the Roswell incident, but the Soviets and China as well both had some sort of spaceship or, a craft of some sort crash, as well as the Nazis supposedly got their hands on one. And then if you look into, various, the Soviets had secret science cities built all over Siberia, everywhere throughout Russia. And, they've got a history of looking into things like psychokinesis, Siberian shamans, Lenin's monkey man experiment, to kick it back to our last episode, talking about monkey experiments. You have Tunguska, Tesla, there's all kinds of just weird shit connected to Russia. So, it's not entirely out of the range of possibility.
A lot of silence, so they can get away with more stuff. There's tons of nuclear sites that still are off the books. I know there's got to be that. But so you mentioned how Russia was doing it. In 1970, the U.S. was operating under the impression that the USSR had spent roughly 60 million rubles. That's about the equivalent of $300 million today.
Eesh.
Annually on psychic research. This, in conjunction with information program, had yielded positive results, pushed the U.S. government to try to close the gap. And so they're just training ordinary people to be weapons. No one can do that, right? Well, we need psychic weapons to beat these psychic weapons.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a very silly scene when these psychics start fighting each other.
Dude.
In order to save the Earth.
Where were you when we bombed heaven? No, yeah, man, I could honestly see, government officials picturing a full-on, Akira type scenario busting out of psychic warfare, in the extreme.
So this operation was always, personnel-wise, very small scale, somewhere between 15 to 25 people at all times. Originally, they had started looking into this thinking, okay, well, if there's some merit to it, go send a guy out to California and see if we can't find something out that we can use. They're like, sure, okay. So they go out there in 1972. They began funding an initial program. I use that loosely, known as Scan8. They chose a site for the project in Menlo Park, California, at the Stanford Research Institute. The main proponents of this project were a man by the name of Targ and Puthoff. And
Dr. Russell Targ and Professor Hal Puthoff, yes.
Hal Puthoff.
Or Puthoff, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's like beef head.
Beef oven.
Yeah. Anyways, their initial research had produced results of a 65% success rate. Ironically, the number needed to complete the government contract and get paid out.
Yeah.
And
achieve more funding.
Yes, if you're going to cheat, give them exactly what they want, 65% success. They're like, okay, cool. Well, I think we can move forward with this. And this would go up the chain. These results were later contested after an investigation by Ray Hyman, a very angry Ray Hyman.
I would be too if that was my name.
A University of Oregon professor in psychology was operating on behalf of the U.S. government at the time to see if these results were real or engineered or...
They chuffed the numbers.
And so one of the guys associated with this initial test was Uri Geller. You may remember him as the man who can bend spoons with his mind.
Yeah.
And he said, this guy is an absolute fraud. These guys are frauds. Don't waste your money.
He has been proven to be a fraud. But the study of Uri Geller goes off into some other weird-ass directions,
yes,
which
it does.
we will have to discuss in later episodes. But right now, just a few... to give you a quick idea of the kind of things that these remote viewers were looking for and working on, they found Soviet secret bases, they found hostages of the Italian Red Brigade, Israeli hostages during the Israeli hostage crisis. They located Scud missiles in Gulf War I, and someone supposedly also foresaw the 9/11 attacks, but was ultimately ignored because as history fell, we know how that happened.
So there was one instance in very particular that got the U.S. a really good fuzzy feeling inside about it, and it was one of the test subjects that was a part of this in 1977 located a lost Soviet spy plane, a Tu-22 that had crashed over Africa and had been missing since '76, and her results were confirmed, like to the T, man. I mean, within a few meters or whatever. It was very close.
I think it was like Rosemary Smith or something like that.
Yeah, Rosemary Smith. She was recruited for the project. That same year, the U.S. Army would start the Gondola Wish program to assess potential applications of remote viewing. The following year, in '78, the Army intelligence began operating Grill Flame at Fort Meade, and this ran until 1984, until leaked to a reporter, one Jack Anderson, and the program came under heavy scrutiny by the establishment, scientific establishment. By 1985, the Army had officially stopped funding Operation Grill Flame, but the program had been shuffled around through red tape and reemerged as Sunstreak, this time funded by other, less public funds, the little black pocket book, I think they call it.
Good old bureaucratic shuffle.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then in '91, the program received its final rendition when it was renamed Stargate, until 1995 when the program finally got the $5,000 or $9,000 sledgehammer and it was killed.
Yeah, it was quote unquote shut down. We obviously see that how things operate already with changing names and shuffling departments. And yeah, one of the earliest success stories of this program was an individual by the name of Joe McMoneagle. He was a Vietnam vet who had a near-death experience in Vietnam, and afterwards came back and realized that he had these abilities. And he was contracted out by the CIA to take part in Project Stargate, and they had him view Mars, of all places. Actually, the way it worked, according to the story, is they gave him an envelope and told him coordinates, and they said, this is where we want you to look. And later on, it was revealed when he opened the envelope that it was Mars. He had no idea. They just give these guys coordinates, and that's where they're supposed to look. When he was remote viewing on Mars, he said he saw like the shadows of people who lived there long ago. They told him to look farther back. He said, he saw more shadows, and they said further back. So he went back like 1 million years, supposedly, and was watching the planet Mars. And he said he saw monoliths and then just a big light, and everything was gone. And now here we are years later, and we have Buzz Aldrin on the news not too long ago saying,
there's a monolith there, a very unusual structure on this little potato-shaped object that goes around Mars once in 7 hours. When people find out about that, they're going to say, who put that there? Who put that there?
Yeah, as well as, they're finding evidence that there was some sort of atomic explosion or war on Mars, or at least atomic explosions occurred on Mars. There's evidence for it.
They're saying that there's not necessarily so much the rust part, but the radioactive isotopes that were found in the soil samples are those similar to something found over a Hiroshima type blast.
Yeah, it's something that's only produced in the wake of an atomic blast.
And if you'll remember from a previous episode when we discussed Mars briefly, that NASA does do touch-up on all their photographs.
Oh, yeah. They're super shady about that shit.
Just like the CIA, quote-unquote, sanitizes documents.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a little touch-up. But the...
I can only imagine what their... how much money they spend on black Sharpies.
Man, they single-handedly keeping that market alive. But one very interesting subject that came out of this, and by that I mean test subject, he is the most infamous guinea pig in the whole program, one Ingo Swann.
Yeah, especially because he was already a civilian with a reputation for psychic ability and was recruited into this program. He wasn't already a company man or a military man.
That's right. I'm an artist. So Ingo Swann was a prominent American research subject, parapsychologist, and author, and apparently a fantastic artist.
Psychedelic shit, man.
Yeah. And born September 14th, 1933 in Telluride, Colorado. Lovely place. He studied at Westminster College, Salt Lake City, Utah, and received a double bachelor's degree in biology and, you guessed it, art. He hit both sides of the
brain?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's awesome. I was going to say he enlisted in the Army and served 3 years in Korea. which
yes,
is a
that's right.
reoccurring thing around here right after the... After which he started working 12 years as the United Nations Secretariat while pursuing an independent art career.
Really? I didn't know he worked for the UN. Crazy.
And these, of course, come from encyclopedia.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, that you made that both sides of the brain comment, that ties right in with what we're going to be talking about. So maybe there's something to that.
If you're going to have a hemisync.
There's going to be some rat feces in there. It's okay. 5% is allowed.
So Swann's active participation in parapsychology research began in 1969 when he was 36. During the next 20 years, he worked only in controlled laboratory settings with scientific researchers. Although he lectured widely on the importance of psychic faculties and potentials, he never publicly demonstrated his abilities. Because of his participation in hundreds of thousands of experimental trials,
Things that make you go,
Arthur Martin Ebon wrote of him as parapsychology's most tested guinea pig, a moniker that he wore proudly. That did a lot of...
Kinda, yeah. He's very Professor X-ish, I would say. But he can walk.
Well, anytime you're working in a black ops,
Yeah,
you're probably just...
the stuff he did was definitely classified. I think they put an expiration date on some of it. Certain specific incidents we'll get into. What he could talk about, he was very open about, and he was one of the other proponents that kind of said, I'm not really that special. Most people can do this. You just have to practice at it and train yourself.
Swann was the subject of experiments of out-of-body travel or psychic perceptions at a distance. These took place during 71 to 73 in the American Society for Physical Research.
Psychical.
I'm sorry, I can't read.
All right. Honest mistake.
Anyways, they involved Swann sitting in a chair and attempting to project his consciousness into sealed boxes on a small platform several feet above his head, in which there was a target symbol completely shielded from view. Swann was monitored by electrodes that would have recorded any movement from the chair. Under these difficult laboratory conditions, Swann nevertheless scored significant success in describing all his targets. This is one test he actually was able to state correctly that a light that should have been illuminated in the target was inoperative, and there was no normal way of ascertaining this fact without opening the box.
Yeah. They asked him to look in the box, and he basically said, like, all I see is darkness. And they're like, oh, okay. He's like, no, I mean, the light's not working in the box. I can't see. And they open it up, and sure enough, the light's not working in the box. Ingo. The argument is to be made that he's an indigo child. So, and he's definitely talked about that kind of stuff before. Yeah, there's another, he wrote a book called Penetration. It's not quite as dirty as it sounds, except for one certain specific moment. So yeah, he wrote this book called Penetration, and it was about how he was basically recruited later on by an unnamed intelligence agency, most likely the CIA, it is believed. They basically wanted him to remote view the moon, and they brought him in. This was in the 70s. This is about 77 to 79. Also, man, I just saw this today, but I'm going to throw it in there to kind of back this story up. If you watch the press releases of First Men on the Moon, Michael Collins, Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, before they go and study their body language and demeanor, they're very like upbeat and happy and excited to go. And then when they come back, they're all like very obviously like shook and just, yeah, they're like it's weird. You can feel the awkwardness and kind of see the concern in their faces.
Well, it's
I mean, well,
the toll that it takes on your body to re-enter Earth is it's pretty taxing, man.
Well, yeah, but it wasn't like right after. They were wearing like suits. They'd been back for a time.
They had time to go home and take a shower.
Yeah. So in about 77, I believe, is around the time. Yeah, he was brought in by, we'll just say the CIA, because that's the most likely candidate, and that's who he kind of alludes to. And they say, we want you to remote view the moon. And he's like, okay. So they put him in a dark room. They said, check out the moon for us. And he's on the moon, and he's walking around, and he says Okay, he's like telling them what he sees, basically. The man who's in charge of this whole project is a fellow by the pseudonym of Mr. Axelrod. Like, that's the shady cigarette smoking man who is actually apparently a pretty nice guy behind this whole thing. And he was accompanied by two agents who were basically men in black that they called the twins. And they're all sitting in this room, and Ingo Swann's telling them what he sees. And he's walking across the moon, and all of a sudden he's like, oh shit, I see like tire tracks. And, I feel wind. How could I feel wind if there's no atmosphere on the moon? And he sees this diffused green light off in the distance. And he's like, well, shit, how can light diffuse like that if there's no atmosphere? So he starts walking towards it, and he starts seeing all these structures that look like radars and domes. And then they're telling him, like, go to the domes. What do you see with the domes? Go look at the domes. He's going towards the domes. He sees windows in the domes. And he's like, oh, shit, there's, like, people, but not people. There's these people but they're not people. And they're all working, and they're all busy. And they're just, like, trucking away, doing whatever they're doing at all these machines and whatnot. And this is on the dark side of the moon, by the way. And he's watching these people, truck away inside this dome. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, one of them stops what they're doing and looks out the window. And then another one, and then another. And then all of a sudden, like a dozen of them are looking out of the window. And he's like, oh, shit, they see me. So Mr. Axelrod's like, come back now. And he's like, oh, shit. And he freaks out. And, like, through the process of freaking out, is snapped back into his body. And Mr. Axelrod is like, shit, they saw you, hon. He's like, I think so. After that, he comments to Mr. Axelrod. He says, you guys know that these things are already psychic, don't you? Mr. Axelrod neither confirms nor denies, but he's like, this session is over. And then they, put him in a fucking limousine and take him back home to his place. Not long after, maybe like a year or so, I believe, he gets another call from out of nowhere. They tell him, hey, do you have a couple of free days? Can you help us out with something? And he's like,
yeah, sure.
Yeah, I guess so. Sure, why not? So he's picked up by the twins again, except this time they put a bag over his head, throw him in a limousine, take him somewhere, and Mr. Axelrod is in the limousine with him and says, are you comfortable with being on a helicopter? While he's got the bag over his head. And he's like, I guess. So they still got the bag on his head. They load him up into the helicopter, and all he knows is that they're flying north. They land somewhere in what he assumes is Alaska. And they put this, like, thermal suit on him to keep him thermal. Yeah, insulated. That's the word I'm looking for. They start walking through the woods. And he can't see shit because it's so dark, and the twins are sort of like guiding him, holding his hands, and he's talking about he almost like falls in all these swampy mud holes and shit. And they finally reach this clearing with a lake. Mr. Axelrod tells him and the twins, they like look at their watches. He's like, be very quiet, be very still. They notice movement, they notice heat. He's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then all of a sudden they're watching this lake, and they see crackling purple and blue electricity sort of forming over it. And then in a snap, there's a UFO that just appears over this lake. Next thing they know, they hear a huge, like, reverse waterfall sound as this UFO is sucking up all this water into the UFO, or into its storage ducts, or whatever you want to call it, and flies off. And he's just standing there, gobsmacked, not knowing what to do. They basically had to drag him back to the helicopter, and he's like, what the fuck's going on? He's like, that was a UFO. We don't know if it's a drone or if it's piloted, but what were your impressions on it? And he's like, I think they're stealing water for a mining operation on the moon. And they were like, okay, thank you. Don't fucking talk about this for 10 years. We'll pay you like $60,000 a year. For all the work you've done.
Yeah, just to go away.
Yeah, just to shut the fuck up and stay quiet. And then after the 10 years was up, he put all this in his book. He has been fairly adamant in saying that, yes, there are aliens on the moon, and B, they are not our friends. So, who knows? It's a strange story. There's also a quick aside that happened during these events, where he was shopping at a grocery store and encountered a woman who he says, basically this whole chapter that mentions this little aside is fairly pornographic, because he said that he saw this woman who was so attractive in the grocery store, tall, red hair, built like a fucking brick shit house. She like inspired all these weird feelings in him, and he thought that it was like psychically induced, and he was like, oh shit, I think she's an alien. And he ended up like mentioning it to this Mr. Axelrod guy, and he's like, stay the fuck away from her, she's dangerous. And he put it in his book, and the way he talks about it is he thinks she was an alien, but it's far more likely she was a Soviet agent. So who knows? It could be either way. It could be both.
If we're following the story.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, the dude lived a fucking insane life. I mean, you know, this is like the more out there Jack Kirby, like Silver Age, crazy sci-fi version of some of the events in his life. But he's written books, and he's painted a lot of psychedelic artwork that sort of is what they call visionary work. Because some of it is like maps to, and I use the term maps very loosely, but they're maps of visions he's seen and places he's been, and like are meant to be representations of other realms, dimensions, whatever you want to call it, realities. From what I've seen, there's various, you know, we'll say entities in some of them. I've never seen a clockwork elf personally, so I couldn't tell you straight up, but there's some strange looking beings, we'll say, in a lot of his work.
So a lot of people would say, well, so he hit on a couple of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the light's off in a box. Way to go. The thing that really got these guys excited, the CIA boys,
All jazzed up.
yeah, was an experiment they did in 1973 where he visited, air quotes, Jupiter, and as a psychic probe.
That's right.
He said there's all this stuff going on. I see the eye of the storm. It's huge.
The atmosphere and its color and all that.
All this is looking crazy. There's a aurora borealis on top of Jupiter.
And a ring.
There's no way that there's any of this stuff.
Yeah.
And then 1979.
That was when
NASA confirmed it in 1979.
Yeah. 77, they confirmed all the colors and the storms, etc. And then 79, they found the ring, because much like Saturn, Jupiter also has a ring, but it's much closer and like more tightly confined around it, so we can't see it as well. But yeah, it was Voyager.
I think so.
Yeah, 79, Voyager saw it and confirmed. So I mean, this dude's got, you know, corroborating sources for a lot of his visions and quote unquote intel, which is pretty strange.
So there's like as far as psychic testing goes, you can do it at home too if you really wanted to. You just take a deck of cards and take out the jokers. You can do red or black, or you can do number or face card. And on average, take an average of 10 and do it with your friends.
Yeah.
You will average somewhere between 45% and 55% accuracy. That's why the 65% or higher rate is so fascinating to the government.
Okay, yeah.
And because
the statistics behind it.
Yeah, I mean, statistically speaking, you're going to be somewhere around 500.
Yeah, because I mean, just black or red, you know,
Yeah.
that's either or.
But if you're calling, like, and you have an even lower chance of a face card or a number. But if you're just trying to go, you know, what's that game we used to play? Red or black? Or it was Triangle of Death, and we had to get
Circle of Death.
Circle of Death. Yeah. Triangle's when you got 3. No,
the funnest way to get alcohol poisoning. Yeah. Circle of Death. Play it with your friends.
We don't advise doing that.
Not with the booze we were drinking. I mean,
yeesh.
Yeah.
But no,
at your own discretion.
Drinking games aside, if you're able to reconstruct those tests, I mean, you know, you can focus on yours too. You don't have to do it like Bill Murray did in Ghostbusters either, where he's just shocking the guy to shock him.
Yeah, that was the testing of negative reinforcement upon psychic abilities. Probably didn't work.
Well, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. All right, we're back.
Hey-oh.
That was a good commercial. Way to go, Mike.
Thanks.
So we were going to get into a little bit more into the actual accomplishments of Ingo Swann. And if you'll just bear with us here, there's a few notes I just wanted to get through, and we can kind of... Oh, whoa, wait. What the...
Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Hey. Hey, what's up, guys? So, my name's Jake. I'm a remote viewer from the future.
Uh-huh.
I just came to, like, let you guys know there's some pretty wild stuff around the corner in the future.
Okay, I'm up for future game. What's going on?
Okay, so, there's gonna be a war.
Really?
Yeah,
A new one?
in Ukraine.
Oh, well, that's already going on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, dude, that's been going on since, like, 2014. It just kind of ramped up a few years ago.
Okay. Well, also, there's this guy named Bill Cosby. He was America's father, and turns out he did some pretty shady stuff. If he hands you a drink, don't take the drink.
Yeah, we knew that. Yeah, we've known about that for a long time.
Oh,
Yeah, I think he still has lawsuits pending against him.
oh, okay.
Do you have anything, like, useful?
Okay. One time there was this guy, and he was like, he's a Olympic medal winner. He was on the Wheaties box. He was America's hero, and he marries into this family called the Kardashians, and he becomes a lady.
Yeah, we've known about that. Yeah, dude, that was like like a decade ago?
Did you know did you know she ran over someone with their car, with her car?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, like, I think Ricky Gervais even said something about he didn't do anything for the, for women drivers.
Oh. Okay. What year is it? Oh.
Yeah, what year are you from?
I just kind of blue skied this. Just kind of, yeah, pretty much. Okay. Well, does anyone here have like $5 I can borrow to project myself back home?
What? No, man. Is there anything that we need to just avoid between now and your time?
Don't vote for Kanye.
Okay.
No, wait. Hold on. Do vote for Kanye, but not in the second election.
That's very precise.
Okay. All right, well, I'm supposed to be looking for Jimmy Hoffa's body anyway, so I gotta hit the road.
And they're still looking for that?
Florida, it's a whole thing.
Did you look on the 50-yard line at Giant Stadium?
No, but I will. I haven't really done anything yet, to be honest with you.
Are you lost? Do you need your adult or guardian?
You know what? I think I hear my oven calling. I'm gonna go ahead and go.
Man, that was fucking weird.
Yeah, that was dumb.
A little bit.
Oh, that might need.
I'm really surprised that Mike was able to sit through that without getting angry at this fucking guy.
I was just doing a faceplant the whole time. Yeah, that might require some you know what? I don't even have to say it out loud.
It'll be fine. I don't think that guy's coming back, guys.
Yeah.
So, dear listener, you too.
Jesus Christ.
You would think that he would have had something from, like, Skynet-isk.
Oh, yeah. I think I did hear something about a box and don't open until doomsday or something like that.
I don't know.
I'm okay. You're okay.
Not according to these weird competing alien theories.
Oh, wait, not yet. We're going to talk about a little something called the gateway process. This is what we were mentioning at the opening of the show that basically anyone can do. The process was discovered, more or less, by a fella by the name of Bob Monroe. He was a audio engineer for a television station, who was doing experiments with what was known as hypnopedia. That's what he called it, which is basically like a learning while you sleep program. He would basically make these recordings of information and listen to them while he slept in hopes that the information would take and he could expand his intellect as he slept, double tasking. Didn't quite work, but in the interim, he did discover that certain frequencies have certain effects on the brain when you relax. And this is what we were playing earlier with the hemisync noise, the 4 to 7 hertz theta wave inducing frequency.
This noise.
That's the one. Yeah. So when you listen to this, it's supposed to align the hemispheres of your brain. I believe we mentioned this earlier, hemisync. And the hemisync process is used to align competing frequencies of the left and right brain, thought frequencies. I'm going to be throwing around, there's a lot of quantum and, because quantum's classic and theoretical physics that in the report written by a Commander Wayne M. McDonnell, who wrote the CIA report, Analysis and Assessment of Gateway Process. The document that was written up for the CIA that basically does an encapsulation of the entire gateway process as discovered by Bob Monroe and later perfected and further studied by the Monroe Institute. And these people were sort of working in conjunction and tangentially with the remote viewing program. The coolest thing about this whole process is that anyone can do it. As a matter of fact, we all spent a fair decent amount of time experimenting with this noise. I'll say in my own experience, I listened for about 15 minutes. I wasn't using headphones, but I was having some of the most vivid, I won't say visions or hallucinations necessarily, but my brain was playing straight up cartoons. And then once I stood up, I had a very strange affect on my equilibrium. Matt?
I listened to it this morning, and for about maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and I got kind of an eerie feeling, and I think that maybe because the lighting in my house is already
Eerie,
yeah, it's already off-putting. It felt like a sense of anxiousness or anxiety, but I think maybe just everything else going on around me at the time.
But you got visuals out of it.
Like maybe it was breathing a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. No, this is nothing really new. It's been kind of put out before as binaural beats, but it's this specific frequency and these specific theta waves inspired by the frequency in your left and right brain hemisphere that when they synchronize, according to the gateway process, are meant to allow you a sort of pathway into higher frequencies. You have to achieve the synchronization to get to the higher frequencies from that point up. And then once you are able to achieve the higher frequencies, then you're able to sort of project yourself. They inspire out-of-body experiences and or astral projection, whatever you want to call it. And the higher frequencies allow you to go to other quote-unquote realities, dimensions, etc. Kind of, there's a lot of different words for the same thing, but my understanding is, as I said before, I know fuck all about physics, but the properties of sound and vibration and frequency are basically integral to the reality around us. All matter is energy vibrating at a certain frequency. So when you achieve this higher frequency theta wave thought process and are able to project in the higher frequencies, then you're able to more or less project your consciousness into these higher realms of other worlds, etc. And to a degree, once all this hemisync is basically the key to the lock that you have to practice with supplemental meditation, relaxation techniques. It takes quite a bit, but the effects are pretty goddamn quick from just listening to the noise. So, I mean, there's definitely something to it. There's also talk in the CIA report that says, well, hold on, I'll save that for last. But the CIA report was supposedly declassified in 1983 and found in 2021 and created a whole like TikTok fad of quote unquote reality shifting. So you have all these kids talking about how they went to Hogwarts and shit like this. I don't know how much of this is, it's a whole, it's you can't measure subjective experience basically, which is the problem here.
Which is the true reward.
Yeah, that's the intention here. I will say the CIA report is heavy on the science. I mean, the man who wrote it, Commander Wayne M. McDonnell, supposedly consulted with biophysicists, quantum physicists, theoretical physicists, so a lot of the science is backed up. This also plays into what is known as holographic universe. For those who don't know, a hologram is a 3D representation of an actual thing. So it's an image of the thing, but not the thing. And basically, we are living in a hologram, whereas true reality is the absolute. It's all very woo and hippy-dippy. I suggest you read the report yourself, which will also be posted up in our show notes on our websites. The main bullet points to the gateway process, one of the more intriguing notes put down by Wayne and McDonnell, who, by the way, I studied this for days and days, looking into background on these people. I could not find anything about this Wayne McDonnell except a LinkedIn report, which I doubt a CIA commander is going to have, and I found an obituary for a Wayne M. McDonnell, but nothing else. And yes, I get it. He's a, alleged CIA agent, but I feel like there would at least be, some documentation somewhere about the guy. I didn't find shit. So this may be a pseudonym. This could be, something else to that effect. I'm not sure. But one of the more intriguing points in this report is where they warn people, more or less, maybe warning is a strong word, but they say, be prepared to encounter sentient, intelligent beings from other realms, realities, dimensions, etc. And this is where it sort of gets into sort of dark territory to a degree, because Mr. Robert Monroe, the man who, invented this whole process, has said that he's encountered a vast variety of different beings, entities, intelligences, etc., across all these different quote-unquote realities. And he has seen reptile-like beings. And he's also posited the idea that the Earth and human civilization in general exist as a sort of farm for higher dimensional beings to harvest what he calls loosh, L-O-S-H, which I find intriguing because it could also be a sort of mispronouncing of lux, L-U-X, light. So
he also falls in line with H.P. Lovecraft's idea on cosmicism.
That's what I was going to get to as well. The idea that there are basically parasitic otherworldly life forms of a supernatural nature, for lack of a better definition or term. This is a reoccurring theme since, the beginning of mankind's history. You have, archons, aliens, vampires, incubi, succubi, the Wendigo, solar plexus clown gliders, all kinds of fucking weird shit. If you don't know what solar plexus clown gliders are, look them up and then be mad that I fucking divulged that information. Yeah, guard your solar plexus, folks. The whole idea of reptilians and these quote unquote psychic parasites, extra-dimensional, otherworldly, paranormal, supernatural, parasitic beings kind of run throughout history, and of course they've been incorporated into modern day ufology. And we kind of want to bust into a bit of what are the prevailing main, we're going with the main three rogues gallery of alien domination theories right now. There is a fourth that involves insectoid aliens, but we're also saving that for a future episode.
A xenomorph.
Sort of, to a degree. It involves a lot of psychedelic drugs, etc. So it's, once again, a whole other rabbit hole that we don't really have time for today, but I promise it will come soon. So, yes, reptilians, gray aliens, and the Nordics. These are your main three, once again, rogues gallery that you see cropping up quite frequently. And I'm going to kick it to Matt real quick, who's going to kick us with some knowledge on some gray aliens right quick.
Oh, yes, the Greys. The most infamous, I would say. Probably one of the first. They went from little green men to little gray men over time.
Yeah, very weird.
But I have some intel I gathered off the nerd.
There might be some shifting between genres here with that. Green to gray, reptilian to,
Yeah, a little bit. So Greys are often involved in alien abduction claims. Among reports of alien encounters, Greys make up about 50% in Australia, 73% in the United States, and 48% in continental Europe. I guess they're on the continental system. And around 12% in the United Kingdom. These reports include two distinct groups of Greys that differ in height. The abduction claims are often described as extremely traumatic. I wonder why. Similar to an abduction by humans or even a sexual assault in the level of trauma and distress. The emotional impact of perceived abductions can be as great as that of the combat, sexual abuse, or other traumatic events. The eyes are often the focus of the abduction claims, which often describe the Greys staring into the eyes of the abductee when conducting the mental procedures. All the mental procedures.
And physical. Well,
yeah.
Who knows?
This staring is claimed to induce hallucinogenic states or directly provoke different emotions.
And paralysis.
Yes. Paralysis by analysis.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, they are often great bedfellows, ironically. Psychocultural expression of intelligence. The neurologist Stephen Novella proposes that gray aliens are a byproduct of human imagination, with Gray's most distinctive features representing everything that modern humans traditionally link with intelligence. The aliens, however, do not just appear as humans, they appear like humans with those traits we psychologically associate with intelligence. That's weird. I feel like it just did that again. Their origin point. Alleged. I don't want to upset any.
Supposedly.
Yes.
Supposedly.
Zeta Reticuli.
Go Zeta!
From the southern hemisphere, the pair can be seen with the naked eye as a double star in very dark skies. Based upon the parallax measurements, this system is located at a distance of about 39.3 light years, or, you guys ready? 12 parsecs.
Oh, shit, not parsecs.
Yeah.
Quick interjection. I believe that much like the story of the Dogon tribe and how they knew way ahead of time before modern astronomy that Sirius was a double star system, Sirius A and Sirius B. I could be wrong on this. I'd have to double check my records in ufology. But the Betty and Barney Hill abduction, which is one of the very first well-known gray alien abductions, she saw a star map that had Zeta Reticuli as the focus, and I believe she was able to map it out, once again, showing features that modern astronomy had not known about that area. So, once again, you have these weird, supposed, foreknowledge of astronomical layout by people who've had interactions with these beings.
Well, it would seem reasonable to me that if you're traveling to Earth, your navigation system would be biased for your home origin point starting there, and then you'd have a perspective.
The GPS.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Oh, there's also the psychosocial theory of gray aliens as well, I've heard, where it's basically funded on the psychological interpretation of how human beings treat most animals, as well as, as above, so below. So what we do to animals, they do to us, as well as not necessarily a coping mechanism, but a reliving the experience of a traumatic birth, etc. Hence why they have the somewhat fetal appearance to them.
There's been suggestions that, yes, you are reliving your birth because when you're born, your eyes aren't fully developed yet. And typically when a doctor or someone pulls you out of a hospital, anyways,
Yeah.
they have a face mask on and they have the headdress.
Yeah.
And so the only thing that's readily identifiable are the eyes.
Yeah.
And even the nose doesn't look as defined because
Maybe you have like a built-in pareidolia from birth, basically.
And yeah, like a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
You know? Because even the one thing that babies all come complete with when they're born is the grip. Everybody talks about the grip, and it goes away. But that's our species trying to
shit that killed Lovecraft.
Yeah, yeah. That's a nice kickback. But a baby's grip is meant to hang on to their mother or to their hair.
Yeah,
and or just anything in general, cling on for dear life.
Or to kill H.P. Lovecraft.
Apparently.
There's also, kind of in conjunction with the pareidolia stuff, if you kind of include the whole concept of uncanny valley, like people talk about way back in our early development as human beings, that the uncanny valley was sort of something that we developed because there was something that looked human but was predatory or, foreign to us, and that's why we get that weird feeling when we see things that look human but we know aren't. So there's probably some crossed wires in there as well.
Our species,
theoretically speaking,
I have been told our species sees more shades of green than any
I've heard
other
that
color.
as well.
Yeah,
and we used to not be able to see blue, which I can't even fucking imagine because
it's weird.
Yeah, or just the sky. I mean, like, what? Who knows?
Back then, the sky was green. Yeah.
Back in my day, this was all covered in shit.
Yeah.
Right now.
So from gray aliens and into little green men, and from little green men into reptilians, as we mentioned before. The thing I find strange, I've never read a David Icke book until doing research for this episode. I mean, everyone knows about the reptilians, but nobody, a lot of the people who talk shit about the guy, I don't think they've ever read any of his books. I certainly don't understand where the whole, it's code for Jewish people thing comes from, because he specifically mentions many times that these are Nordic, Germanic, royal Aryan bloodlines, like the people who are the aristocracy of Europe, etc. The other thing that really intrigued me was the whole shape-shifting aspect. I have a feeling that when most people say, shape-shifting lizards, they're assuming that it's some sort of biological process, or that they're wearing a fake plastic human suit.
Or like a Richard Nixon mask.
Yeah, basically. The Iguana Don. Hello, I'm Don Iguana. The book, The Biggest Secret, which I think is his most, let's say, voluminous work on reptiles, boy, it sure goes into a lot of detail, and most of it's pretty fucking boring. But the cool stuff is where he talks about the shape-shifting aspect of them being interdimensional beings, as we're kind of talking about with Hemisync and stuff like that. The concept of cymatics, and once again, sound, vibration, frequency, sort of plays into this. He mentions it specifically, and how with cymatics, if you take sand and set it down on a speaker and play one note, the sand will form in a specific geometric pattern. You play another note, it takes the form of another specific geometric pattern. You play the first note from before, it goes right back to that same first geometric pattern. So every note, every sound has its, what's the word I'm looking for? Equivalent geometric expression. The whole idea that he expresses about the interdimensional shape-shifting, I mean, a lot of it has to do with weird, once again, wooey, possession type stuff. But if we're talking about reptilians as actual physical lizard beings, I don't necessarily buy all that. But I think it is a fantastic metaphor for the shittiest parts of our ancient past and what, remains in our brain. The human military industrial R complex, or whatever you want to call it. The lizard brain. The lizard brain, it's territoriality, it's aggression, it's
the baser instincts.
Yeah, base instincts, and also, strangely enough, ritual, which, I mean, to a degree, I can definitely see how ritual formed at our most basic, like it formed within us as a behavior at our most basic.
Well, it was beneficial to us at some point, right? Because
Yeah. It's all based, like, if you look at it from the standpoint of scientific experimentation, like a necromancer or a wizard or whatever you call it performs a certain ritual in order to enact a certain outcome. It's a way to encapsulate in the outside world an inner desire, basically, depending on what your intent for said ritual is. So I can definitely see that. The odd thing I find, in conjunction with not being able to find any information on this Commander Wayne McDonald guy, is the mention of reptilian entities with this gateway process. Because as we've all attested from firsthand experience, there is something to it. It works. When you listen to these sounds, something does happen to the brain. You feel it. What I find strange is the incorporation of the reptilian entities with the use of this process, because I can't find any corroborating sources on that. Everything that I've seen where it's mentioned, it's either a cut and paste of the same fucking article over and over, and it's pictures used from the David Icke book of reptilian entities.
Vicious cycle of...
It's I think there might be a bit of a, I mean, this is just my paranoid brain pole vaulting ahead and making assumptions, but I think there might be a bit of a scare campaign against using this process. And I think this is, that's my own take on it. But yeah, if there's a boogeyman lurking, then, people are going to be less inclined to try shit out. I mean, I don't know. I've had various, let's say, psychedelic experiences, and I mean, entities I've encountered are, it's hard to differentiate. This has always been one of the, biggest arguments in, occultism and mysticism, etc. Like, are these beings part of your own psyche, your subconscious? Do they exist in the collective consciousness? Do they have, independent sentience and intelligence of their own? Are they separate from us, etc.? So somewhere in the middle, yes, I think that's where it exists. And then finally we get to the Nordics. The main reason I wanted to involve these guys as well today, I've read recently one of the most fascinating, just incredible, there's this book called Closer Encounters by a gentleman by the name of Dr. Jason Reza Georgiani. He's a bit of a problematic character to some people because he was formerly affiliated with the alt-right, but he eventually said, these people fucking suck, and left the movement. And he's a philosophy teacher and a historian, etc. But he very succinctly tied together his own personal theory on the Nordics being behind most UFO, encounters and just horrible shit that we hear about. Because something we neglected to mention with the Greys earlier, and that's my bad, they are usually considered in most reports in ufology as being biomechanical entities that are in service to a higher power. That
Worker
being,
bees.
Yeah, drones. And they're in service to either reptilians or the Nordics. The basic outline for his theory is that if you go all the way back to the mystery airships of the late 1800s and the people who were funding them and who was building them and the people who encountered them, a lot of them said that they were, the pilots for these things sounded like they were speaking German. They look Nordic, obviously. They're not named that for no reason. And then you have stories of the Nazis, recovering crashed alien craft materials, etc. And then, Zyglocka and things like that. So basically his idea is that at some point, the Nazi super soldier program, through eugenics, etc., the use of time travel through Zyglocka and these retrieved materials, etc., have basically conquered time, more or less. They built bases on the moon, etc., and came back and sort of bred themselves into time. It's a very Ouroboros closed time loop kind of thing, a grandfather paradox of sorts, but backwards, I guess. But yeah, he's the one who he basically posits that the Nordics are behind all this, and he makes some pretty goddamn convincing arguments. I highly suggest you check out the book. It's very interesting, and a lot of it also kind of lines up with what David Icke says about like tall whites and albinos and things like that. Obviously, he's saying that these are reptilians, but I don't know. Some of the descriptions they sound more like these Nordic guys. So the book, once again, Closer Encounters, worth checking out. He also briefly goes off on the whole insectoid aliens thing, but once again, we're going to get into that in a later episode. I do have a couple quotes here from the gateway process that I kind of want to close out on. Do you have anything else?
Actually, I was going to ask you, so these different parts of the brain that we were going through, right? Memory and the reptile brain. Do you think that, and clearly none of us are medical professionals here, but
I'm kind of one.
I mean, I took an EpiPen once to someone. So the part of the brain that's the God brain, that's responsible for like the religious experiences and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's activated when certain chemicals are ingested.
Like the pineal gland and everything closer to the front is the more evolved part.
So that part of the brain, do you think that maybe part of the process of engaging both spheres is more or less also just by another name enacting that that part of the brain to have that religious experience?
That's kind of what I was going to mention, because throughout the quote-unquote CIA report on the gateway process, it mentions there was a bit of a quote-unquote controversy for a while because the page 25 was missing out of this, I believe, 27-page report. This was the point where Commander McDonnell was basically, if you read the report and kind of look at the subtext, the best way I can put it is it almost seems like Commander McDonnell is like, fuck, I kind of shouldn't be telling the CIA how to use this stuff because this could, bring us all together as one. This is a way for people to return to the absolute, and
let's not let them monopolize.
Exactly. And supposedly there's actually even been government contractors hired by the CIA to build a, I guess for lack of a better term, a medical device that is like a CIA, or I mean a DMT vaporizer drip that sort of pumps out a consistent supply of DMT to be breathed in through like a fucking Darth Vader mask, basically, to allow soldiers to go into quote-unquote hyperspace, or whatever you want to call it, to keep civilians out and or battle with whatever's there. I can't confirm or substantiate these reports necessarily, but the device does exist, and it was created by biomedical researchers who were supposedly under contract with, defense agencies, etc. If you look into like secret space program, there's a lot of like the stories that come with some of it is that there are precursors to the space program that weren't, that did not revolve around rocketry or, physical methods of obtaining flight into space, literally. There were more methods much closer to this, used through like psychedelic drugs and things like that. I think that was kind of what the impetus behind some of Operation Paperclip was, supposedly meant to grab a lot of the scientists who were into that shit and quote unquote space medicine, which is a very vague. I mean, I understand that it's like
he's gonna grow up to be a space surgeon.
Yeah. Doesn't take a rocket surgeon. It's a very vague term. I get that it, is meant to catalog and inspect and research, the atmospheric effects on the human body and things like that. But also it's space medicine. Medicine being the key word there, and pharmacopoeias, etc. Pharmacology, excuse me. It's inner space, and inner space is as a path to outer space. That's kind of the idea, and then that's where allegedly speaking, once again, according to certain conspiracy theory literature, etc., that those scientists brought in through Paperclip were basically shifted around into MK Ultra, because if you really break down the idea behind, at least one of the ideas behind MK Ultra's sub-project MK Often, which is more or less revolved around, the occult and shamanism, etc. This is basically, it's essentially weaponized shamanism. Like, it's psychonautics. It's weaponized psychonautics. That's a cool fucking album name. I don't know if anyone wants to go for it.
That is a KCI original.
Yeah, copyright.
I was going to say, doing the research for this, there was a guy saying on one of these YouTube shows, because, any source I can get to kind of start looking.
You go down rabbit holes, it happens.
You just find stuff. Von Braun was also associated in the early days with this project in its infancy. He believed that there was something to it.
With the remote viewing program?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would totally, yeah.
And
I actually think that the whole reason, well, not the main reason, but the fact that there was a psychic arms race, quote unquote, between the Soviets and America is because we sort of we divvied down the middle all the mad scientists from from the Nazis. So they got their mad scientists and we got ours, and a lot of them were probably working on the same shit and, jumping off from each other's theories.
It's fascinating to know that the guy was just a rocket scientist, and then he's, it's this reoccurring theme, man. Like all these people that like have this really huge streak of brilliance in them, but it's untethered by sanity or like there's some huge personal defect in them that they branch off so far out.
Yeah. I mean, this once again kind of plays into the whole theme behind our show, because you have these people who are, for the most part, a lot of the people we talk about are brilliant in some way in their own right. But, you have to have these people who question or theorize, would be a better way to put it, the odd and the strange, because basically the best way I can put it is if you told someone from like the 1800s that there would be such a thing as test tube babies, they'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about?
What the fuck's a test tube?
Exactly. They call it science fiction.
The concept of a meteorite wasn't scientifically accepted until like the 1700s, because these farmers would always say the same thing, like, man, it fell from the sky. Oh, this guy's crazy. Burn him at the stake. They're like, no, there's the rock right there.
I've got a couple quotes here from the actual CIA documents written by, quote-unquote, Commander Wayne McDonnell that sort of encapsulate the idea behind the gateway process. And some of it's pretty out there. I will not lie. It took me several times reading it to sort of soak it in and comprehend. Yeah. But like to hear it, here you go. The point to be made is that the entire human being / brain / consciousness and all is, like the universe that surrounds him, nothing more or less than an extraordinarily complex system of energy fields. So-called states of matter are actually variances in energy, and human consciousness is a function of the interaction of energy. So, once again, I think we might have mentioned it in the John Lilly episode, or before that, but the visible electromagnetic spectrum that is perceivable to us is very small out of the whole total. I just want to add that in conjunction to that point. The universe is composed of interacting energy fields. It is in and of itself one gigantic hologram of unbelievable complexity. The human mind is also a hologram which attunes itself to the universal hologram and achieves the state which we call consciousness. Fundamentally, the gateway experience is a training system designed to bring enhanced strength, focus, and coherence to the amplitude and frequency of brainwave output between the left and right hemispheres, so as to alter consciousness, moving it outside the physical sphere, so as to ultimately escape even the restrictions of time and space. The participant then gains access to the various levels of intuitive knowledge which the universe offers. So, once again, this kind of plays into what this McDonnell character was kind of working towards. It seems like he's shifting in thought towards the end of the report into mentioning this is kind of the secret behind a lot of, mystical orders and mystery schools, etc., shamanistic practices, meditation, etc., that last quote, I had to read it several times to really soak it up. But yeah, that's kind of a pretty concise, explanation behind everything. I will say that the whole idea of entities and how they're harvesting life force or light or loosh or whatever you want to call it from humanity, these psychoparasitic organisms that have basically existed as long as humanity has, maybe even longer. I don't know. I feel like it kind of boils down to if you believe whether or not things like love or light or life force within humanity, within a single individual even, is a finite resource or not. Maybe, and this is just the idealist in me, maybe we can feed these things and still get along great, and maybe, I don't know, domesticate them, for lack of a better term. I mean, it just depends if it's, I don't know, it just boils down to how much love and light and life force, etc., you think you can spare or have in you or can reproduce, etc. I don't know. And that's basically what the gateway process alludes to as well. I mean, this is... we've said it before, but this state we're in now is essentially, we're here to learn, we're here to gather experience and take all our experience back to the absolute with us, and that's what makes it the absolute. It is everything that is, was, and will be.
It's similar to the path of nirvana.
Yeah, or the Tao.
Yeah, one step at a time.
Don't be scared to look into it. I plan on actually kind of playing around with some of this stuff a little bit more. I ain't afraid no lizard man. Actually, when I said that I was seeing cartoons and shit in my head, like I was using like the bodies of gray aliens like nunchucks, and I grabbed two by the necks and I was like running around doing all kinds of cool Samurai Jack Kirby looking shit. It was awesome. I don't know. I think that's where my mind goes because it's just I have a weird inner cartoony, actiony comic book sort of world, but very vivid. Play around with it, see what it does, see where it takes you. As far as I know, we're actually going to be closing out on about, what do you think? 10 minutes?
Yeah, I'd say 10 minutes is good.
Yeah, we're going to close out with 10 minutes of 4 to 7 hertz theta wave inducing hemisync for you. If you're listening with headphones, fantastic. That's the best way to do it. If you're driving, you're going to drive into another dimension. Oh, yeah.
Get the couch or the chair at home.
Yeah.
Tell the kids to go outside.
But let us know if you had any crazy experiences. Email us at kcandicast@gmail.com. kcandicast@gmail.com. Or you can check out our website at kooks-cranks-and-iconoclast.com. Yeah, that's where we're going to have all our show notes. There's going to be, you can read the document there. There's going to be all kinds of extra goodies. We're trying to set up, we got some things in the works. We'll just leave it at that.
We have irons and fires.
Yes, many fingers and many pies. Don't worry, we washed our hands. But yeah, check out the website, read the articles, and let us know what you think. Get a hold of us. Thanks for listening. This has been the Kooks, Cranks, and Iconoclast podcast with myself, Mike.
I'm Matt.
And this has been our roundabout Ingo Swann episode. We mostly just want to let you know the secrets to altering dimensional reality shifts, etc. Yeah, that's what you get here and nowhere else. So yeah, thanks for coming by. We'll see you next week. I believe we're going to be getting super kooky. It's going to get a little political, but the guy we're talking about, man, nutbag. So tune in.
Drop out.
And put your dukes up.
Have a great day.
Peace.
you.